Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Conversations in Anarchy. I'm Evan Kopelson, the marketing director for Anarcapulco 2020, and I'm joined today with my co-hosts, Angel and David. Catherine's having some connection issues, so we're trying to get her back on the call, and we are The Show Must Go On. So we've got to launch this show today, and we hope that Catherine's going to be able to join us in these conversations. So thank you, everybody who's joined us, everyone who's come on and downloaded our ebook. We're celebrating at Anarcapulco almost 1,000 downloads of our ebook, The Anarchist Guide to the Galaxy. It's only been out for 2 weeks, and we've got almost 1,000 downloads already. So we're super excited that the message of anarchy is getting around, and that we're have this beautiful piece of content that we can share with people. And so we're here today at Conversations in Anarchy, and for the next 10 weeks, we're going to be talking about the philosophies of anarchy, about where we're coming from on these different issues. Again, we are growing our community here. The purpose of these conversations is to get to know each other and to build community. It's not us here teaching you guys anything. We don't know anything more than anybody else knows. We're really fascinated and passionate about life and about self-determination and self-governance and all of these philosophies of anarchy, and we just want to bat them around, and we want to talk to each other about it, and we want to get your feedback on it, and that's why we're here today. So we're super excited that everyone's here. So let's do a quick round robin. Let's go to Angel. Introduce yourself, please, a little bit about yourself, and your intro about why you're an anarchist, and then to David. And then if we get Katherine back, we'll be able to have Katherine on. If not, we'll just take it away and we'll get into the content for the week. It's going to be a great conversation today, and we're really happy to have you all here. So go ahead, Angel, take it away.
Hey, thanks, Evan. My name is Angel. I am a philosophical anarchist. I am the editor of the Anarcapulco blog and the ebook, The Anarchist Guide to the Galaxy. I'm an unschooling mom. I am an advocate of Austrian economics, and I spend a lot of time thinking about how we ought to live together in a peaceful society, how we can accomplish our goals in the direction of creating that sort of a society. So, it's me.
Awesome.
David.
Hey there, everyone. Yes, I'm so happy you guys are joining us for this second week of the 12-week series. My name is David Rodriguez. I'm a community facilitator of Anarcapulco, a fellow co-producer, and managing the family camp stage, an author of The Anarchist Guide to the Galaxy. And I just love freedom. And so I've been going to this event for, let's see, my 6th year. And so how this is beneficial to you is we're talking about some of the infrastructure things today. And the kind of backstory is helping children get out of the compulsory school system. I help parents do that, homeschool consulting, and accelerated graduation. That's a little bit about me. So I'm excited to join the conversation, have you guys join with us.
Awesome, you guys. Awesome. So today, you guys, we are getting into the meat of anarchy philosophy. Okay, so I'm just going to share my slide really quick for a second. It's just going to be one slide so you can see kind of what's coming up today. And so what we're going to be looking at in today's discussion is anarchy and infrastructure. These are the real meaty, juicy stuff. Can anarchy really work at scale? Who builds the roads if there's no government? Don't we need to have taxes in order to build the roads? And don't we have a civic duty to participate in things like voting and taxes paying and, military service possibly, and then, issues like police and fire and hospitals. So this is, I think, the thing most people who hear about anarchists and anarchy communities are curious about. They're like, okay, you're self-governing, you're not going to have a government. Who's going to build your roads? So I've got some stories I can share about some communities I lived in. But before I even get into that, I'm really curious. Oh, it looks like Katherine's back. Hey, Katherine. So it looks like we're just ready to jump into this situation. So I'd love to hear from David. If you could start with let's start from the bottom up. You were talking about private policing and private hospitals in a prior conversation we were having. I'm really fascinated about that. Could you talk about, like, okay, let's say a bunch of us live together in this community, and then who builds the roads, who polices, what happens if a house burns down? Let's get into this.
Yeah, so that's a lot. Here's what I would say is that who's going to build the roads? Humans will build the road. People will build the roads. Roads existed long before government. Government is a belief in authority. It's an imaginary thing. We don't need coercive funding mechanisms to pay for the roads. We all want to transport. And what you and I were talking about, the police, because once I discovered this philosophy that we don't need the state, I was so intrigued of these questions. How would these things work? I wasn't concerned about the roads. I was concerned about the police and, fire and hospital type things. But there are private hospitals and there are private fire protections. And believe it or not, there's private security companies. And I was looking into it because I was so sick of seeing the police brutally murder people on video camera, people that are running away, getting shot in the back, unarmed people, and nothing happens to these cops because they're gang, unfortunately. And so they have this privilege, this blue privilege. And so I found an organization in Detroit, Michigan, really inspirational and powerful, called Threat Management Center. They've been around for over 20 years. And so I was so fascinated. I flew out there, saw their operations, got to meet Commander Dale Brown and see his vision of what's going on. He doesn't even consider himself to be a private police force because policing is like a policy. He's all about prevention, preventing crime or threats by creating circumstances or an environment where crime and threats cannot occur. So that's a really powerful strategy that's different than the police, right? Because they say a gun in the hand is better than a police department on the phone, right? Because when someone's violating you, you have to defend yourself. And so his organization is like on a monthly service, and he has neighborhoods he protects, very just middle class, good neighborhoods. They pay like $10 a month. And when they need him, they call him up. He shows up. One of his guys shows up. I think he has 20 or 30 employees, maybe more. And the first 10 minutes is free. And then if it goes beyond 10 minutes, using his negotiation or threat problem conflict resolution, then it's $10 for 10 minutes. And as I mentioned, he's been around for 20 years. None of his clients have ever been killed. None of his staff have ever been killed. And this is in downtown Detroit. So this is a model that's been around and proven. This isn't theory, right? So naturally, we all want to have voluntary relationships. And so we think that the police around us are some protectors, right? And this is because of the media and the indoctrination and the statist programming in the schools and Hollywood, right? But the reality is that this organization has killed nobody, has had no lawsuits. And one of the things that he talks about is that wherever people feel safe in the neighborhood, then the businesses improve because people want to live there, families want to move there, and the economy improves. So safety is the #1 factor for having a successful and even economically productive village, town, and city. And this is one model that I found that really inspired me, and he is looking to franchise. And so that's one of the reasons I flew out there, to learn how he's doing that. And if I can assist, he'll be in Acapulco in February. But there's other organizations like that. However, I like what he's doing just because he has a vision of duplicating himself and making it widespread. The challenge is that people got to take leadership. And I'll tell you how he started, and I'll give it back to you, Evan or Angel, who wants to take the next conversation. He started with him and his dog and a gun. That's how he started. He moved into this building, and he basically traded. He told the owner of the building, hey, you got a lot of crime around here. I was trained to help protect people. I'm a protector. So how about you give me a free room in your complex, and I will protect it. And so that's what happened. I think he did that for maybe 6 or 12 months, just literally being very, poor, but protecting people and being a real hero. When you can save people's lives genuinely, without using coercion and force, but using tactics, psychology. Some of his stories are so amazing. I think Vice did a documentary, and there's other documentaries on YouTube that show the power of the Threat Management Center. And so that's one example of the police that helped me overcome my disbelief that how could a stateless society protect people? Well, it's not. It's humans protecting people. Just like humans are going to build the roads, we want to be safe. And so if we can identify the threat and say that person is a threat or that group is a threat, then the peaceful people will gather. And as we mentioned on the first week, the third principle, key principle of anarchy, is self-defense. I can do anything I want as long as I don't aggress against you or your property or your person. However, if you aggress against me, I now have moral justification to use reasonable force to defend myself and my property. So that's the Threat Management Center. And if anybody wants to talk about the fire or the hospital or the roads or anything else, that's what I want to share, and happy to answer any questions in the comments.
That's amazing, David. I want to hear from Angel on that. Like, you know, I have one question for you, Angel. I'm going to turn it over to you, and then feel free to share whatever you want. But something came to mind, which is when seconds count, the police are only minutes away. And, you know, also, do you think, I love the idea of the Threat Management Center. And in Detroit, which is, you know, such a high crime area, historically, it's an amazing incubator, you know, to be able to look at that and say, hey, if it could work there, it could really work anywhere. Angel, do you think if we didn't have a state government at the beginning, a federal government, would we even have coast-to-coast roads, or maybe the roads would have never been built coast-to-coast?
Coast-to-coast roads. So let me take that question in a minute, but I really want to say, because I love the idea of the Threat Center, because it's local, it's people in the community, right? This is a guy who lived in that community, and he decided that something needed to occur. And I think that is what happens when we are not looking towards some outside force to come in and protect us. And more importantly, that means that the people in the community who know their neighbors are able to respond to threats or problems. And I think that really would decrease the number of high conflict situations between police officers and the people that they're supposed to protect, because they really do treat every situation as it might get out of control, and they don't have intimate knowledge of the neighborhoods they're servicing, or they don't know the people. And so it's really important for communities to be the key participants in providing safety, because you know that kid from around the corner, and you know whether or not he is really a threat to people, or if he just talks a lot, or, you know what I mean? Like, these are the kinds of, you know, individuated circumstances that people within the community can address. And I know in New York City, what you see is that the police officers in certain neighborhoods, which is where I used to live, which is why I bring this up, is that these police officers are not from these neighborhoods. They do not understand the culture, and they treat the people as other, rather than as people who they're there to protect. And so I think I really like the idea of what the threat management is doing. I think we need a lot more of that, and a lot more ownership of our own protection in our own communities. But the roads, this is the roads. It's funny. Sometimes I say to myself, people act like roads are so complex. Like, it's so difficult to just pour some, like, you know what I mean? Like, I think daughter could figure this out with given the right tools. But then I was reading, there's this really great article, I don't know, or a really great essay by Leonard Reed. It's called I, Pencil. And the premise of it is that this really seemingly simple item, really no one knows how to make it. No one knows how to make it from start to finish. There are all these antecedents, all these things that go into making a pencil that one person alone is not able to coordinate. It really takes, I mean, because you think about what it takes, there's logging, wood, there's the grinding, and there's transportation. So no one really understands how to make a pencil, and yet we have pencils, and the government wasn't involved in making that. And so it's a really good, I'll post a link to it. It's a really good essay because it highlights that things happen naturally as the consequence of this spontaneous order of people trying to meet their needs. And so we don't need a mastermind who has all the answers. And honestly, have you looked at Washington? Do these people really seem like masterminds to you?
Yeah, you know, it's true. I'm seeing a comment from Ray Terrace here that how's it going, Ray? I'm glad you're on this call. The railroads were built by private companies. It's a really good point. Now, there was a lot of abuse, and there's a lot of people died building the railroads, and that goes into ethical situations and treating people, treating your workers well. But that's a really good point. We got coast to coast railroads, without the state building them. But I think there was a lot of state-private partnership going on there.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Katherine, are you able to join? As your audio work? Oh, I'm so excited that you're back. Okay, good. So we have Katherine Weiss. Can you go ahead and do your introduction? And then you had told me a story the other day, Katherine, that I'm hoping you can share with everyone here. And it was about a community where you lived for a while, and there was a big pothole or something like that. And it was just a great story, and I loved how that came together. So if you would share that with everybody, that would be awesome.
Sure. Okay, so I'm Katherine Weiss. I'm this year's co-producer of Anarchapulco. I am managing the health and wellness ecosystem, the Anarch Awaken stage. We've got a practitioner space, a lot going on. And my personal project is the homestead.guru, where everyone's a guru and we all share our practical tips for getting off the grid, for gardening, unschooling, all that kind of stuff. So, roads. Yeah, this is an awesome conversation. And one thing that I would like to remind everyone about roads coast to coast is the Oregon Trail, the Santa Fe Trail, okay? These were roads literally created by horse and buggy rolling over the same spot over and over and over and over. That's where we got Route 66, okay? So a lot of these interstate highways that we have were actually paved by free people just beating down the brush as they walked through, okay? I mean, we used to travel by foot, and we created these pathways. They started out small, they became wider, we started adding more resources and, infrastructure and things like that. So yes, I do think roads are a possibility without a centralized government. How quickly will they evolve? I don't know. I've lived in both Mexico and the United States, where in the United States, particularly in Texas, where I live, there are just billions of dollars funneled into roads. And man, the roads are nice. They're huge. You've got like layers of interstates, but construction takes forever. It's time consuming. There's all sorts of people involved. Even the state funded road construction in Mexico, I thought was way more efficient. My children noticed it, how quickly they build roads. But the story that Evan was referring to is when I was living in Bonneville, which is just south on the beach from where Anarchapulco is held every year. And it is a little beach community inland from the airport. And there was this situation where this giant pothole, I mean, humongous, I could have curled up and laid inside of it, sized pothole formed in the road. And for a couple days, nothing happened, and cars were running into it, and pieces of car were like going everywhere. So the pizza shop across the street took one of their chairs, a white plastic chair, and they set it in the pothole to warn people not to hit the pothole, right? Someone hit the chair, they hit the pothole, it kept happening. So what happened? The neighbors came out with a bag of concrete and they filled the hole themselves, okay? So yeah, it's not fancy-pantsy, it's not a giant cement truck, but the point I'm making is that if there's a will, there is a way, and if you want to drive somewhere safely, you can take responsibility for your own road travel. Your community can take responsibility for that. It doesn't have to come from a master planner in some capital city or capital state that is removed. It can come from your local community. It can come from within.
That is awesome. I'm curious to know if anybody has thoughts on kind of at what level do these negotiated agreements need to happen? So if there's a ton of different spread out communities, You're talking about Mexico. We're talking about this is where I start to, for instance, voting. Let's just talk about voting for a second. Why do we have voting? I think it's because there's a lot of people who live in a concentrated area, and then there's decisions that need to be made that will impact everybody. So they're like, well, everybody, you want it or not. And voting kind of spreads as an outgrowth of that. But at what point does that become untenable? Like if you had a Quaker community, or you had a co-living community where you had a house meeting every week, and like you had to discuss what's going to happen, and where the money's going to be spent, and the group buys for the house, or what kind of events you're going to have socially. And all of this stuff involves communal agreements and talking and making agreements. But at what stage does it become untenable, like that there's too many people involved? Are we fantasizing that we can figure everything out on our own when there's hundreds of millions of people? Don't we need some kind of, governing body? Like, and I'm asking that question as like, obviously we all think the answer is no, probably not, but I'm asking the question so that we could answer it. So I'm just turning it back then to you guys.
Yeah. What I would say is that for sure we don't. It doesn't matter if, let's say slavery, right? Say, oh, who's going to pick the cotton, right? So it doesn't matter who's going to pick the cotton. It's immoral to put people in chains. So it's just the same way. It's immoral to steal money from people and act like they're going to, they're the master know-it-all. However, in a community, I think, well, this is what has been known over 250 years ago, is that you have natural rights, right, to your life and your liberty and your person. So the Bill of Rights was supposed to put chains on the government, right? The freedom of expression, of speech, and press should not be infringed. The right to bear arms should not be infringed, but they infringed, right? So we're seeing a criminal organization masquerading right now. So there are criminals, I should say, that are masquerading, pretending like they're our friends. And so as long as we acknowledge that we have rights, individual rights, then that's the fundamental place. So yes, voting is, in my opinion, we vote with our energy, we vote with our money, right? So like we put our money into businesses, we buy foods or products or services. That is our vote. That's our economic vote, which is most powerful, because if we can redirect our funds, which are going to the city and county and local governments, then those governments won't have any money, right? These government employees, they don't work for free. They're working for money. And so in a voluntary society, my opinion, we have natural win-win outcomes. So if say Angel's my neighbor, I want to be a good neighbor to her. And if she wants to reciprocate, that's great. Otherwise, the word will get out, she's a bad neighbor, or I'm a bad neighbor. But if we be good neighbors, then it's like, hey, she's a good neighbor, I'm a good neighbor, Kat's a good neighbor. Oh, this is a good, safe place we want to be. We're not going to coerce each other. And then some other band of thieves rolls into town and say, hey, we're going to force you to do stuff. Now it's easy for us to see who is the criminal, because they're using coercion and they're violating our natural rights. And the other aspect of it, I mean, you opened up a big question here, but the other aspect for the roads was like, it benefits everybody if the roads are good. Why? Because there'll be more traffic. There'll be more commerce. People will come to our stores or our businesses, versus if there's 2-foot, potholes, then nobody's going to be driving in our area, and so no one's going to be supporting our businesses. The economics of it all. So this is why the economics of society are so critical, and why the state takes 30% conservatively, maybe 40 or 50% of our income, of our livelihood, and then puts on a flag and says, we're your representatives. Although I'm here in California, my representative allegedly represents 300,000 people. You tell me how a House of Representative can represent 300,000 people. I don't think that's the way to go. I can represent myself. I'm president of my own body, of my own self, and I think everyone else can be. But if they voluntarily want to give that up, as they did in Sharon, and maybe, Kat, you can speak to that, because you saw how in Sharon, Mexico, they've been without government, or I should say without the state, without politics for 8 to 9 years, and they have kind of a representative type government. And there's also like a democratic type model in some of the schools that exist. There's a movie out there called Summerhill and they show they voluntarily opt in, and then they agree to have consensus or agree to have a majority vote on certain issues. They make rules, and as long as it's voluntary, I think it's all good. I think the problem is when there's some hierarchy of people that say, this is the way it has to be because we say so, and if you disagree, we're going to fine you, levy you, you won't be able to sell your property. And I think the voluntary rulemaking or cooperation is the way to go.
Yeah, there's definitely, when it gets into government coercion and all of the levers of the state where, you know, forced participation in taxes. Let's go into taxation as theft. That's a perfect time to kind of open up that thing here. Angel, you want to talk about taxes?
Sure. This is an easy one. If I don't want to give it to you and you take it from me, it's or you threaten me, it's theft. There's a argument about that in certain, I don't know why this is so complex an idea for a lot of people to get, but what they want to do is I don't know, create this euphemism, whitewash it, talk something about the greater good, and I definitely don't think that's that's valid.
Do you feel like there's any case? Do you feel like there's ever a case for taxation? Like, are there any services that you're provided or that we quote unquote enjoy as citizens that you would kind of be like, yeah, it's not so bad. I don't mind kicking in a little bit for that. Or do you feel like in every case there should be an actual agreement? I'm going to pay X dollars towards this, or don't take my money.
So when someone says, is there any situation under which taxation is okay? What I hear is any situation under which I can hit people to get the things I want. That's what I hear. And so the easy answer is no, there's no situation where it's okay to make someone else meet your needs. That needs to be something that happens through cooperation, whether it be the roads or protection. And it's really actually quite ironic because this is a major one, especially for libertarians who still do believe in the state and that it has a valid function in protecting people. It's ironic to say that this is the one instance in which taxation is okay, but in order for them to protect people, they quite literally have to attack other people and steal their resources. So I don't think it's okay. I think the bigger question is, how do we organize when lots of resources are required? And I think if you look at lots of the big corporations and companies, you see how they organize when lots of resources are required in order to get us things like Apple iPods, you know what I mean? And so it's just having faith in the idea that will occur, because it does occur. We don't even have to have faith. We don't have to believe in something that already exists. Nearly everything, like your sneakers and your televisions, nearly everything that is created through a marketplace of people making free choices. And to the extent that we can get government out of pulling resources away from that, we'll see a lot more of it. So actually, there's a caller, and I don't know if he wants to come on and say something. He raised his hand. Robert, I unmuted you, but he is actually building roads on his property. Robert, are you around? Robert Kruger? Yeah. So chime in whenever you want, Robert. But I hear about this, and actually I'm going to post a link in the chat. There's a group or an individual who created a road through his property because there was some damage to one of the major roads. It cost him about £150,000. To repair the road, the government estimated a cost of £150 million, right? It's the difference between,
yeah.
And this, I know, right? That's crazy. And that's what's funny, because people will say, like, oh my God, you want there to be toll roads? These are toll roads. These are toll roads. $150 million of taxpayer money for something that could be done for so much less. They see the idea of toll roads and tolls, but they don't understand. They don't recognize that on the other side of that, you're not paying taxes. We don't have like this big bureaucracy. We don't have wars that we're paying for. We don't have property taxes. We don't have all of these incredibly large intrusions into our financial world, so that paying a toll might not seem like such a bad thing. Robert's mic is not working.
Yeah, so I'm curious. I just feel like I love these conversations because it's real life stuff, but I'm also kind of a little skeptical. And so it makes me just like want to call out things that I feel like just are maybe, not quite realistic. And so, but one thing I want to ask about is the concept of fairness here. So like, let's say that there's a community, and I love what Katherine was saying about the Oregon Trail and like the way those trails were beat with like wagons and like it's true. It's like, wow, oh yeah, that's right. We did learn that when we were kids, and that's how, that stuff was happening, and the roads got built on that. That's a really good point. But let's say we're in this community and everyone says, okay, we're going to build better roads. We're going to all kick in and we're going to pave these roads, and they're going to be beautiful, and they're not going to be these bumpy dirt roads anymore. And everyone's like, all right, I'll kick in, however much. And everyone agrees. But there's a couple curmudgeons in the community that's like, well, I'm not going to contribute to that. And the dirt roads are fine. And everyone pays to get it done, but these couple of people just never contribute to anything. But then they want to use the roads, and they want to go to the hospital when they get sick, or they want to whatever. And like, we all know people like this in regular, guy who never picks up the check, or the person who, just mooches off everyone else. Like, how do we deal in an anarchist society with the concepts of fairness at scale? Does that make sense?
Tolls, prices, the marketplace. That's how we do it.
And the world isn't fair. Life isn't fair. This idea that everything has to be fair is it's absurd. I mean, we are unique individuals with unique individual preferences, and what's fair to me may not feel fair to you. I mean, isn't that the story of every 6-year-old conflict? That's not fair. Like, you know what? Sometimes life isn't fair. Sometimes I only have this much to give. We may not know why somebody isn't in a position to contribute. And I think that in the world, there are people who voluntarily give more, and there are people who voluntarily produce more and have the resources to contribute more. And when they are not being sucked dry by the state, and they're able to make choices about where they put the fruits of their labor, we can work this stuff out. And it doesn't have to be fair. Like we don't have to go point a gun at someone and say, hey, well, Joe down the street paid $10 and you only paid $1. That's not a world I want to live in. I don't think that's a world that any of us want to live in. And I think there's just the reality of humanity is that some people give more and some people will give less. But like Angel was saying, some of it can be standardized. You can put tolls up. Even when you're driving through Mexico, yes, they have toll roads, right? That are actual toll roads where you pay money at a booth. But then they also have these community tolls, I guess, where there's people standing on the side of the road with jars and they're shaking it, asking for money. You don't have to give money, but Paolo and I like to, because we want to support these local communities and contribute. Are they using it for roads? Are they using it for community defense? I don't even know half the time, but either way, I want to give. Not everybody's going to, and that's okay. Maybe some people give a 500 peso bill and some people give a 50 peso piece. It just really is going to differ from car to car, but they're not chasing me down and hunting me down. On the days I drove to Yoga and went through those tolls and didn't have any money, I smiled and waved, and they smiled and waved back because I had given them money at different times driving through, and we kind of got to know each other. Hey, there's this freckle-faced girl that drives down the road twice a week, obviously is a stake in the community. And I didn't feel judged or ostracized or treated poorly for not always contributing. So I guess for me, anarchy doesn't mean fairness. Anarchy means freedom, and it means the ability to choose. And we all have a right to choose different things. We have a right to participate in different ways. Some people may be passionate about the roads and transportation because their industry is dependent on it, where other people may be passionate about the environment and parks and recreation, and other people might be passionate about different things, and that's okay too. But I think in the end, when we're not being oppressed and we're allowed to really utilize our resources how we see fit, my experience with humanity is that it all comes together cohesively and we all contribute in a really beautiful and unique way.
Yeah. Go ahead, Angel. Go ahead.
I mean, that's, to me, this is key. Isn't what we want from people is for them to have the choice to be part of the community, so that it's real, so that we look at our neighbors and we don't look at them with animosity. We look at them and choose to be kind. And that's how you grow as a community and as a people. That's how you advance. So it's so interesting to me that people want to force submission to ideas rather than having people come willingly in a really receptive way, so that whatever changes they make are real changes that can be the bedrock of a progressive society.
You know, society and community building takes work, and a lot of people are lazy and would rather have the decisions made for them and say, you know, I don't want to go to that meeting. You guys just do what you want. No big deal. And it's amazing, these things that are coming to bear, because it's like at each level, there's the same question that I'm kind of asking. And then the answer is unpacking the indoctrination and the years of, you know, what I called my education, which is really my indoctrination. So that's why I like kind of sharing my perspective in that way. I have a feeling I'm not alone. A lot of people who are kind of exploring anarchy and learning about it might have these same kind of thoughts that I have. I've been kind of an anarchist for years. You know, said F you to the corporate world years ago and went off on my own entrepreneurially and lived in a bunch of communities. And some of those worked out good, bad, or indifferent. And it all had to do with the amount of structure and the buy-in that people made or lack thereof at the beginning. And so everything you guys are saying resonates with me from my experience, because I know that in communities where there have been mutual agreements and everybody has a stake in what they're doing, and like Katherine said, some people are more passionate to participate in a certain area, but then other people be more passionate to participate in another area, and that's how the entire broad spectrum of services and things and art creation and businesses and all these things come out, because people have their unique contributions that they make. So I'm finding this conversation super fascinating. I want to call out to the audience. We're getting a lot of chat in the chat, and I want to know if anyone wants to come on the call and actually talk to any of us and say anything. So if there's anyone out there who's chatting in and you want to come on the call, please do. Now's a good time for that, to ask a question.
Well, I don't have a question. I'm Verity Love. I'm the future founder of Purple Paradise Resort, which will also have an intentional community.
Hi, Verity.
Hello, Evan and Katherine and Angel and everybody. I'm really excited because I didn't even know that I was an anarchist. I didn't even know what the word was. I've been a nonconformist for so long. But you brought up a really fascinating topic in what's different about PPR, which is Purple Paradise Resort, or what will be different is it's going to be totally cashless. You can't barter, no time banking. Before you even come, you already know where you're going to contribute your time, energy, and skills to the sustainability of the resort and the community. So like if you're an artist, that's wonderful, but that's not going to sustain anything. So that's part of the agreement. And I know from when a couple years ago when we thought we were going to we were told we were going to have funding, people came out of the woodwork, and it was just really awesome to see the camaraderie and the consciousness level of these particular beings that will be the first basically on board. So, and we have a visionary circle, but I don't see that as a governing body. I would really like to have theaters, and we invite everybody, even our guests, to sit in on our whatever meetings or circles that we have and get their input as well. I think that's the only way democracy doesn't work, and I don't want to be a ruler. I told people I'm not going to be the go-to person, so get that out of the way right away.
How many people, Verity, are you expecting to, out of the gate in the new community?
Oh, well, I really not sure because, you know, funding, man, when you talk money, people come out of the woodwork. I can tell you that I'm looking at a property of 14,000 acres.
Wow.
So on Belize. And so we will be able to, it's not, we don't want to build it all out because I'm very conservative. There's panthers, there's, oh my gosh, howler monkeys, we've got tropical birds. We don't want to screw up their lives, you know. We've all done enough of that, right? Or had that done, excuse me. So, but yeah, you know, I've only designed like 10, no, maybe 15 residential domes so far. So I know who's coming. I know pretty much how long they're going to stay. The resort will be totally different because we're going to be able to have conferences and maybe even have Anarchapulco come in and visit and do a conference. So yeah, who knows? The sky's the limit. And we want to build them all over the world. So everybody will have a choice, money or no money, freedom, no freedom, the best health care. I mean, real health care, not death care. Health care that you can ever possibly want in your life. A lot of robotics, technology that, you know, people are afraid of, but I'm not. I want to go play in the ocean or learn how to golf, along with contributing.
Yeah, and have fun in life, right? That just sounds so exciting.
Yeah, I picture a mini water park. It's not like an amusement park where you can come and spend a day. Everybody has to contribute. Although we will have tours, they don't get to use the amenities. I mean, you know, you got to draw the line somewhere, but they can see how a community that doesn't need money, of course we do to build it, unfortunately, but it's an oxymoronic idea to me, but you know, we'll have tours and things like that to educate people. We'll do webinars, and you know, it's going to be open to the world. It's not really about Belize. It's not about me. This is just a vision I was given a long time ago, and I just feel like it's so close because I've been on Belize for 5 years.
Wow, that is so exciting. Do you have a timetable in mind? I know that money has a lot to do with it, but do you have a kind of timetable in mind?
Well, let me tell you, I've been promised funding 7 times in the last 5 years. And right this minute, I'm still waiting. So I do everything I can in the background. Mm-hmm. I just located a natural law trust company who will write that as common law. I'm really excited about that. And I've come into some other big trading platforms that might make a huge difference.
Wow, it's amazing. There's a side chat going on about permaculture, and permaculture is something I'm really passionate about, and just hoping that we can get into that here. And for anyone who's watching and doesn't know about permaculture, it is basically it's incorporating design and the environment together, so that when you build, you're working with the land. One of my favorite things in permaculture that anyone ever told me about, I've never actually seen it, but like now I'm dying to have this one day in my life, is called a fedge. So it's like a lot of people live in homes and they worry about the deer coming and wrecking their gardens, and like they put up all these barriers for the deer. But in permaculture, they say just build a fedge, which is a feeding hedge for deer, and put it on the farthermost outside edge of your home to make it easy for them to get what they want, so they don't have to come into your land looking for what they want. And then on the inside layers, you plant stuff that they don't like as much, that doesn't taste as good for deer. And so that's like an example. And like I lived in a community where we had a bike rack that had a top on it that would catch rainwater, and then it would protect the bikes from the rain, and then it would filter the water down into big barrels, and then we can use that for watering our gardens and stuff like that. So that is amazing stuff. That's like the magic of community building. It's like when people can get together and really use their brain power and live in concert and community with the land. Verity, it sounds so exciting what you're doing there, and I hope that you continue to come onto these calls and keep us posted in what's going on with your project, because we would love.
I definitely intend to, and I'm into Aqua Hydroponics, and the property that I've looked at has 7 former shrimp farms. So that would be a huge, good opportunity to put Aqua Hydroponics there. So yeah, I'm really excited. I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, please do.
Y'all will hear me.
Good. I hope we do, Verity, because what you're doing, I think it's visionary, because after attending Acapulco the last 5 years and seeing where we're going, I think people want to be with other freedom people, you know, living around status, and I'm in an urban area, maybe you are, I don't know where you guys are at, but the community, the intentional community, I think is the future. It's just a matter of finding where. And then what I would invite you to consider is the code of conduct, because let's say you do have the money. Let's say the money comes through tomorrow, whether it's 10 million or 20 million or whatever that price is going to be. There still is, like Evan mentioned in this conversation, is how are we going to run society? What is going to be the expectations for people who come into our community? And so this is something that I'm thinking about. And I think simplicity is the key, right? The self-ownership principle, the non-aggression principle, and the self-defense principle. And then like the roads, or someone mentioned a thoroughfare, communities, what's our perspective on engaging with the state? You know, one of my principles, and this is kind of tongue in cheek, but it's kind of serious too, is like, I'm going to have a never call the state policy in my village. Like, if you got a problem, don't call the state. Come knock on my door, come knock on the neighbor's door, whatever it is, but don't call those guys, okay? We are adults, we're peaceful people, we're not psychos like those guys. Let's keep those guys out of this village. This village is sacred. We got kids, we got women, we got old people, all kinds of, we got regular people, adults, this little sacred life. And so anyways, I would just congratulate you on taking the initiative, Verity, and joining us. And so, yeah, join us again. And the code of conduct is something I'm working on too. So that's a really brilliant idea too, because a lot of people, there's crime here, but it's rare, but it gets blown up in the media. I mean, you know, all over the world it gets blown up. And one murder is one too many. Please don't misunderstand me. So, but the biggest question I get is, well, what are you going to do for security? Well, when I got this vision, I never saw security in any of it. So now it'll be Purple Paradise Guardians. And I just, you know, I also have envisioned that, and most of the people that I know that are coming, they're peaceful. They're just like, they're one of us, you know, they're soul stars. They want to have this type of community where nobody does any harm, and you do what you came to do. You're self-governing, self-responsible. You got kids, you're responsible for them, and you don't wait for someone else to do something. Each of us are responsible to pick up whatever we need to pick up. Here on Belize, they're terrible about litter. I mean, horrible. And my street's clean. I pick up a lot of trash, and people see that. And I had a guy walk up to me a couple days ago, and he said, you know, we're not stupid or ignorant. We're just lazy. And I said, well, it only takes one person to start picking it up. And when people start seeing that, a lot of times you start a chain reaction, and I've seen it on my street.
It does work out great, you know, like modeling the behavior that we want to see in others. Sometimes it's funny, like I live in this apartment, and there's a lot of, there's this mailbox with like everyone puts their junk mail in this thing under, and then it spills over, and then it gets all over the ground, and then it, you know, and then I feel like I'm always the one who goes and picks it up, you know, and throws it out. And then occasionally, though, I see someone else picking it up, and I'm like, oh, good, they're actually contributing to like the community. You know, so like I want to touch on two things. We have to come back. There's a lot of chat about hospitals and stuff like that. So we're going to come back to that, I promise. Before we do that, I want to talk about state interference in intentional communities. And Ray Terrace put in a really interesting comment when I had mentioned the thing about the bike rack with the rainwater collection. It's actually illegal in many states to collect rainwater. And this is one of these things that is the most egregious state overreach, government overreach, to tell you that you own your land. I know there was a guy they put in jail. he had his own land. He wanted to be completely off the grid, so he didn't hook up his electric and his water. And the state arrested him and said he was living, they repossessed his land. So you can't even really own your land, because like you want to own your own land and say, you know what, we don't want electricity. We're going to generate our own solar. We're going to collect our own rainwater. And then the government says, well, if you're not hooked into the power grid and paying us the power bills, then you are not living safely. And it is now a fundamental state interest for us to take your land, kick you off your land, put you in prison. And I know some people have been fined severely for collecting rainwater on their own property. This is the kind of thing that pisses me off beyond measure. I don't even, and so I want to turn that on to, you know, because we're peace-loving anarchists, but man, that shit pisses me off. So like, what do you guys, Katherine, Angel, David, I'd love to hear from all of you on this topic of state overreach and what to do about it in those cases.
Well, I would say the first thing is to do is use your voice and speak up. And the next thing you can do is you can exit and you can leave. If your voice isn't making an influence, you know, the thing is, sure, you can stay where you are and you can deal with all the bullies. But if it's getting to the point where it is unsustainable for you to function in a community in a way that feels authentic to you, then get out. Don't make excuses. It doesn't matter how long your family's been there. It doesn't matter what's going on. Like, we are not entitled to any spot on this planet. In fact, human beings are designed to be semi-nomadic. We are hunter-gatherers by nature. And we tend to, if we are living in the wild, so to speak, we tend to migrate with the seasons. And so this idea that I'm going to stay in one place forever and ever and ever and ever and ever, I don't think it's realistic as people and as a community. Now, that doesn't mean it's okay for bullies to come around and say you can't collect rainwater here, or you know, you can't grow. Front yard gardening used to be illegal in Florida, and it's illegal in Kansas City. At least it was when I lived there most recently. To grow food in your front yard, you know. But some of this comes down to personal responsibility. You know, if you want to live in an area with all these restrictions, you either got to try and change the restrictions or maneuver within them. If you really want to live a life of freedom, you got to find a place that is going to support that. You got to find a group of people that are going to support that. So if you don't want to deal with a homeowners association, don't buy a house in a neighborhood with one. If you don't want to deal with restrictions on rainwater collection or building, you know, different infrastructure pieces on your property, don't buy land in an area where those type of laws exist. That's just, you know, it comes down to personal responsibility in some ways. Now, of course, when we all work together, we can change these things. Some of these things are being reversed. Colorado now allows rainwater collection. You know, Florida now allows front yard gardens. These things used to be illegal in these states. Now they're not. But for me, I don't like being involved in the political process anymore. It's not fun for me. It drains me. At one point in time, it invigorated me and lit me up. But I'm just at a different point in my life. And quite frankly, I would rather find a piece of land somewhere where I don't have those sort of restrictions. It's a lot easier to keep restrictions from being created than to undo restrictions that already exist. Because obviously the people in that community have allowed this to happen for some reason, whether it's ignorance or complacency, or it's what they really want. And I think in Kansas City, after attending, my friend was running for city council, and we went to all of these neighborhood meetings. These people wanted these restrictions. I mean, it was crazy. It was some of the most difficult meetings I've ever attended, because I thought these people were absolutely ninny-nanny, do-gooder, micromanaging control freaks. They were saying things like, well, if people garden in the front yard, there's going to be tents put up in farmers markets on the street and cars, you know, and they just like blow the stuff way out of proportion, when really, my opinion is, things like permaculture actually reduce the strain on the infrastructure. When you can go out into your yard and you can pick fruit and vegetables and nuts and have animals that are roaming there, you don't have to drive somewhere. You're not using gasoline. You're not putting wear and tear on the roads. You're not having to go to a big supermarket necessarily. It doesn't mean trade won't take place or commerce won't take place. There won't be marketplaces. but it means that this heavy load on the infrastructure can be reduced. So I don't know. I think really for me, as we start looking at solutions for freedom and coming together, it's going to look different for everyone. You know, this community in Belize is going to function differently. I don't want to live in a give-based society. I don't want that. That doesn't work for me. I've visited lots of communities before, and when it comes to people giving their time and energy, it tends to be me giving a heck of a lot of it and other people not giving as much because I'm a doer. So for me, I would probably tend to gravitate to communities that are structured in different ways. I also, at this point in life, after visiting different communities in Italy and Mexico and all over North America, I'm looking for long-term projects where people have shown that they can deal with conflict management, that they can work things out amongst each other, where certain infrastructure already exists. You know, things like in New Hampshire, Porcupine 411. This is a way where something is going on. If there is a crisis happening, you're getting pulled over by the police, you've got some sort of criminal in your yard, you can call Porc 411 and it is going to call the phones and text the phones of the people in your community so they can show up with video cameras, they can show up with weapons if needed or whatever to protect you. And we had a little micro version of this taking place in Austin, and it kind of lost steam because some of these things, like, they really do require someone who is driving it. And for me, I want to be at a community where there is some sort of leadership, because I feel like if there's not somebody who's driving things, sometimes things kind of fall apart. But that doesn't mean dictatorship, right? It just means that somebody is driving things forward, and maybe that's in a decentralized way, whatever that may be. And of course that can be structured differently, but that's what I think is so beautiful about freedom, is that we can all create communities that function in ways that jive with our personalities and our unique desires and our unique preferences and our skill sets and whatever it is that we are seeking out of life. Some people want the urban life. Some people want the country life. Some people, you know, really want to roll their sleeves up and work. Some people just want to pay money to be a part of a community. And for me, all of that's okay. I won't participate in all of those things, but I support your right to live in a community and participate in the way that you want to best. Anyway, I think that was all I had to say on that subject right there for now.
All right, cool. That was a lot.
Sorry.
No, it's really good, because I love when you get on your passionate roles, because I'm always taking stuff away from that. And it's like, oh my God, I want to talk about this next week. Angel, and, you know, so Catherine's idea is, okay, you can pick up and move if you don't like the restrictions. I know there were some places where these restrictions were put in place for people who lived in places already, and then they were kind of newly put on restrictions. But then, you know, you kind of covered that too. There could always be people who vote that in or who don't care and who let that happen. And so I think what I'm taking away from Katherine, and then I'll turn it to Angel, is it's really important that people speak their truth as it's happening. And so to be aware of what's happening in your community, to be aware if they're trying to pass laws and restrictions that are going to impact you, and to speak up when it counts, to show up to those meetings, to, canvass with your neighbors, and to just be active. So community is work. You have to be engaged. Or, you know, you've got these people in the state, whether it's the local government or the state government or the federal government, it's these people in their back rooms making decisions that are going to impact us on our daily lives. And why do they have the right to do that? Angel?
So to me, the idea of having to move in order to protect my rights it's similar to this argument I hear from people sometimes, where it's like, well, if you like anarchy so much, why don't you move to Somalia? If we keep ceding space to people who want to infringe upon our rights, then we won't have any space at all. So I definitely think that you have to stand your ground and try to protect your freedoms. And I think that really the biggest way for us, or one of the greatest ways for us to do that, is one, to respect other people's freedoms and to show them and to communicate with them that it is a violation of rights. And really what we want to do is respect each other's rights. So voting, and I don't like the idea that people have to be active participants in their communities and they always have to be thinking about what the busybody next door wants to do in the community and then be there to fight. I think if people confine themselves to certain types of actions, those are non-aggressive actions that only affect their own property, or people who get together and decide to make decisions about the property that they own, but that excludes any property that you own. I think you don't really have to be, you don't have to worry so much about being engaged with your community. I do not want to live for my neighbors. I don't want every day to have to be making decisions about what's going to happen in the park and the roads. And honestly, to a great degree, I don't care what happens. I mean, I do. It's my community. If I see something that I don't like, then I'll have to address it. And maybe I want to talk to my neighbors and say, hey, I don't think this is right. I don't want, can we not have a tent city in the park across the street from a house? But ultimately, I do. And in that instance, then I agree with Kat that if something is happening that you do not agree with or don't like, but it's happening on someone else's property and within someone else's rights, then yeah, it's definitely on you to say, well, the cost of being here is too much and I would rather be elsewhere. So really, before we even start talking about communities, we have to talk about what is it okay for anyone in the community to impose upon you.
That's a really good point right there as well. I'm wondering if anyone in the community here that's on the call, I loved having Verity on the call and sharing kind of how she's living anarchy and what's going on. And this is a great opportunity for anyone, if you want to share kind of how you're living anarchy in your life and how these things kind of resonate for you. We'd love to hear from you. So please come on, raise your hand. We'll unmute you and come part of the conversation.
You know, there's something I'd like to add here to what Angel was saying, because I think when we're creating societies, this is a really important thing to talk about is what am I allowed to force you to do or not force you to do? And I think there's two different ways really to join a community, and one is intentionally and one is accidentally. And a lot of us were born into communities that had rules that maybe we don't agree with, right? And that is probably going to be a circumstance where you need to voice or you need to exit. Now, if you're part of a group that creates a community and you have a say in what the rules are and you're voluntarily consenting to it, then that creates almost a different standard, I think. And there's two communities that I really have a lot of respect for. And one, David, you brought up earlier, and it's Chiron, Mexico. And this is a area where the cartels and the federal government were kicked out of Mexico and they self-govern. What's really interesting about them is they don't do politicking with yard signs and campaigning, and they take all of their votes verbally, face-to-face, standing in a circle. Okay, so this is like really belly-to-belly community organizing. And the other one is Raven Rock's Eco Village in Ohio, Bellsville, Ohio. And this is one that came from a Quaker community. They left the Quakers. They were a little bit more radical than the Quakers, but they have that very like do-it-yourself, rugged kind of individualism, right? And they've never taken a vote. Everything is consensus-based. And so they literally don't force each other to do anything in both of these communities. They talk it out. They sit down, they communicate. And if people feel really strongly about certain things, for example, in Ohio, they were growing Christmas trees to raise money to buy the property. And that's a long-term project, right? The way you prune a tree at the beginning of its life affects its growth, you know, at age 10, 11 when they harvest it, right? And so if they couldn't agree on how to prune it, so they took two groups and they had decade-long investments on their time and energy of how to prune these trees. And it was like, all right, you take these trees, we'll take these trees, and we'll raise them this way. But everything was consensus-based, and there's no force at all. And to me, that's really beautiful because it is a voluntary community. It's a voluntary group. They're all there willingly. They're all there in this geographic space because they want to be. And none of them are forcing each other to do anything when it comes to the way they're governing. And I think that is fantastic.
That's beautiful. It reminds me of like the Quaker meetings where, you sit in a circle and everybody, if you want to speak, you raise your hand and you speak. If you don't want to speak, you can pass. Everyone kind of contributes and nobody is aggressing on each other. I love this. I think we have another guest. I think Simone is here and has been chatting in some stuff, and we have you unmuted.
Yes.
So I want to introduce Simone, and I'm going to have you say your last name so I don't botch it with my apologies. But welcome to the call, Simone. And
hi. Yeah, it took me till third grade to learn how to spell it. It's Skowronek. It's Polish. The W is a V. Blah blah blah. But Simone is great. I thought I took that out, but oops.
I would say Dzień dobry, right?
Okay. What?
I think that's Polish for hello.
No, it's Polish. It's actually Polish for lark the bird. Lark the bird.
Oh, your name. Oh, okay, beautiful.
My last name, yeah, it is. Anyway, beautiful. My parents are German immigrants. I was born in Canada. First 10 years in rural Canada. Then we moved to Vegas. Blah blah blah. Anyway, I'm in Guatemala now, and I came on vacation in 2015 and never left because. All this stuff was going on in the U.S. and I've been a nonconformist. The idea that somebody can tell me what I need to do, like wear a seatbelt, just for an example. I have a different version of that whole thing. But anyway, I live in like the poorest region of Guatemala at Lake Atitlan around indigenous Mayan descendants. And what's going on here is there is a lot of expats, not only from the United States, but many countries, Europe, Australia,
I think we're having some technology issues.
Anyway, people from around here is hugely here. And what now?
I think we're having technology issues. All the cameras are freezing.
Okay.
So tell us where you're coming from on the whole anarchy thing. It sounds like you're definitely a unique bird, since you said your name means bird. So like you're unique because you've struck out on your own. You've moved out of the country. You've set up shop, and you're carving out a life for yourself. Can you tell us more about
along with about 2,000 or 3,000 other people from around the world who are like fed up with what's going on in their countries. It's not just the United States. It's Canada, it's Britain, it's Australia, it's New Zealand, it's South Africa right now. I know a couple of people here from the, anyway, it's just, but we kind of, look out for each other. If somebody needs something, we have our little groups or whatever on Facebook, and we can go out, hey, we need this, like everybody goes with their strengths. And like I said about the garbage, 3 years ago when I came here, you'd be kicking garbage out of your, with your feet walking down the road. So, a group of us one Sunday got together and walked around the streets cleaning up the garbage. And then we did it a few weeks later, and then, the locals started helping because it's them, throwing the stuff on the ground, us in the, modern world or whatever, we know about that. But it was interesting to watch the transition of the locals, like cleaning up and picking up and not having, not throwing their garbage on the ground. Now, if you go around the village, there's trash cans strategically located. There is a governing force here, but even though there is, federal police, state police, or whatever, if something goes down here, especially in the local community, they handle it. There is I call it vigilante justice, like, because the states take a long time, the court processes take a long time. For example, rape and kidnapping of children here is what are the things. You don't do that because they won't even go to the state. The local people handle it, and it's, you're no more. That's the kind of thing that goes on here. So it's very interesting, to see everybody like worrying about health care and who builds the roads. Right now, they're rebuilding roads here. They're taking rock from the volcano. I live at the base of a volcano. They're taking that rock and carving it into cobblestones and redoing the road. That's not the state.
Wow.
That's the people.
Yeah, that's
You
pretty
know?
amazing. That's pretty amazing. How
So
did you guys all
I'm
find each other? Did you all just end up there and now you're a community, or did you find each other and move there together?
No, we are all independent of each other here. There's a vortex, Lake Atitlan. I don't know who knows about Lake Atitlan, San Marcos, San Pedro, San Juan, Panajachel. We're in a volcano caldera, and there's 3 volcanoes within this caldera. It takes about 5 hours to get here from Guatemala City, and the road from the Trans-American Highway down into this caldera, not everybody can handle it. So we're not easily accessible, but people that are called here, there's a calling to come here. I'm a metaphysical minister. I take in everything from all the religious aspects, because every religion has something good about it. But, there's a higher realm of existence that we occupy and are influenced by. I'm a big fan of Mark Passio. I really believe that for these communities to be successful, that all those aspects of natural law, who we are as as a conscious being here on this planet, I feel like all of that is as relevant as who's going to build the roads. That's kind of my take on all this.
Thank you for sharing that. I think it's really valuable feedback. And we're over the hour, but we're talking, so we're going to keep going as long as people have things to contribute. I think, is Michael here? Michael Nimitz. I thought that if you had something to say, we'd love to have you on the call. Michael, is there? Can you pop on?
Hey guys.
See you, Michael.
Hey, Michael.
Hey, good to see y'all. And man, I'm telling you, I'm really loving what you guys are doing, man. So much love and respect to everybody. I'm really, man, it makes me smile so much. You guys are doing such a great job, covering these issues and kind of creating the opportunity for people to learn about what this is all about. So much love.
Oh man, much love right back to you, man. Thank you so much.
And secondly, I just I love what the discussion is here. I've got a lot of experience in kind of construction, so I know a little bit about building roads and that type of thing. But the thing I wanted to address was the 2 things that I think we really need to be aware of is value creation and harm, and just making people more aware of how they identify that in their own lives, even in themselves, because we do a lot of harmful stuff to ourselves, unfortunately, based on kind of our conditioning. And just being aware of that really, and creating an atmosphere of an environment where we can kind of learn how to become more aware of that, I think is the way to really solve a lot of these problems. Because even if we're talking about building a road or doing something like that, there's 2 components. There's the value side, and then there's the harm side. And whether it's harming the environment or harming other people's property or something like that, just being cognizant of that and being open to having those conversations, I think pretty much unlocks all the problems. I've done large projects like the O'Hare expansion project, which was a huge government project, but it affected so many people. And the reality is you really still had to negotiate with people. You still had to come to some kind of conclusion to get all these property owners to agree to do something together. And of course, it revolved around a lot of money, but in regard to a government. But for a community, that can be a lot of different things. There's all kinds of different ways that we can transfer value to each other. That if we understand that we're looking for value in everybody, and we know that everybody can contribute valuable things in some way, shape, or form, and then also be open to understanding that people can be harmed by things. Those 2 alone, I think, can really.
I think that's interesting. It really is. And it kind of touches on, for me, something that Verity was sharing, that like before people come there, they have to say what they're going to contribute. And it has to be agreed that it's going to be a benefit to the people that are there. I love that, because like I've lived in communities before where it was like a little more haphazard, and like the guy who was the kind of landlord manager of the thing basically made all the decisions on his own. It was kind of like a dictatorship. And if he decided that somebody had some skills that he thought were useful, he would let them live there for free. And other people, like I had to work 7 days a week in a dispensary for $11 an hour so that I could pay the rent in this community so that other people could live there for free. And that didn't work out. That was unsustainable after a while. So I think this whole concept of mutual buy-in, everyone's got to have a stake, and they have to agree if there are rules that people shouldn't have rules imposed on us. I think that's something I'm taking away from today, which is, you know, when the state kind of, we're born into this state, and then there's all these rules that we didn't sign on to that are thrust onto us that we then have to deal with.
What's interesting about Tehran is they, you know, their rules, they have rules, but it's all verbal rules. They don't actually write the stuff down, and the way that, you know, transfers is it's got to be simple enough that everybody understands, you know, so that you limit the amount of rules, because, you know, if you just keep writing rules, before long people forget what those rules are. And so yeah, I think it's a really great way to you know, keep things simple, as I think someone else referred to.
Yeah, like I can remember some of their rules, Michael. I remember some of Sharon's rules, like you can't live there unless you were born there or you marry someone who was born there. That's the only way to be able to claim residence in Sharon, and it's so simple. I mean, that's really all that it is. And I was like so sad when I found out. I was like, I want to live here, and they're like, sorry, Charlie, but like we keep our stuff tight, and that's how our community works. And so I really appreciate the simplicity of it there. It's really beautiful.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I want to make some comment, Evan, on this, just the whole community aspect of it, because like we're all sovereign, actually, right? We don't owe anybody anything. It's the state. Somebody mentioned the birth certificate or social security. They impute that on us. We're born natural, and then we opt into these systems. So like whatever property we're able to acquire, in my dream world, I want that to be my sovereign land, you know, where it's like, let's say, and I've concluded I need about 5 acres for myself. So I want to be able to see my neighbors but not hear them, right? So I think this is one of the challenges with neighbors, and I want to be respectful of my neighbors, but if my neighbors are literally like 5 feet away, and some of these houses or apartments that we live in, they're like, your neighbor's right there. So if I want to, you know, be loud or have a barbecue, then I got to be respectful of like my neighbors, which is super close to me. But if I got my own land, a decent amount, maybe 3 or 5 plus acres, something like this, then I can actually like, you know, let it all hang out and kind of be free. It's like, hey, wave over there. And then we can negotiate with each other like neighbors. Because this is going back to the original question of like, how do we organize all this stuff? Well, I'll organize me. And then if you organize you, that's cool. And then you organize you over there, that's great too. And then maybe we can make a little agreement, right? So I think one of the important conversations, maybe for future presentations in just dialogue, is like alliances. So I envision creating alliances with people. I want to make an alliance with Angel and with Evan, with Kat, and you know these other people. So it's like I'm my own entity. I'm literally like my own nation, you know. And I don't even know if the nation is the word. It's just like my own whatever.
Yeah,
the
your
word
own
is.
sovereign entity. I mean, that it makes a lot of sense, because it cuts down to what we were talking about with the rainwater and with the government saying like, you get your 5 acres of land and you're like, great, I'm going to put up my solar panels and I'm going to get my rainwater collection. And the state's like, no, you're not on this land, because, you know, whatever stupid rule that they have. And then we find out that we live in this place and we buy our land and we're not still sovereign on our own land. Right. And how sucky is that?
Terrible. That's terrible, man.
Yeah.
You pay the money, and that's a property taxes is like serious crime against humanity. Property taxes, man. That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my
Let
God.
me get I want to get Ray Terrace on here, and I do want to try to wrap up hopefully in the next maybe 10 minutes, unless we're going to really be rolling. But Ray Terrace has had some really good comments here in the chat, and I think he wants to come on the mic. So I want to welcome, and I want to thank Michael so much, Michael, for coming on and sharing.
Thank you, Michael.
And hey, Ray, it's so good to have you here. Ray Terrace is an author and a life coach. What's going on, Ray? How you doing? How you enjoying our conversations?
Oh, I really love this stuff. You hear me okay?
Yeah, absolutely. You sound great.
Okay. I have to tell you that for a long time I've considered myself to be a misfit. And people have said, "You're weird." I usually say, "Well, thanks. I'd hate to be normal."
Nice.
But a couple of things I like to mention. I used to work for a hotel, and they would run, the owners of the hotel ran it almost in an anarchistic way. Everybody was left alone. You did your job, and that was it. How you did it, they didn't care, you know? And it was so successful compared to other businesses that the owners of this business went on to build the largest water park and mall in the world, West Edmonton Mall.
Oh.
That's how successful it was. And I'd like to say, if we're talking about leaders, I have a lot of respect for Richard Branson. He is very much an anarchist type guy. And here we go, worrying about hospitals and roads. Well, he's getting us up into space. So with good leaders, we can accomplish anything.
Really,
and I know there's a lot of good leaders on this call right now. That's it. Just want it short and sweet. Thanks a lot, Evan.
Hey, thanks so much, Ray, for coming on. We are so happy that these conversations are starting to involve the community. So, you know, as we roll these things out week after week, we hope more of you are going to come on and talk with us and kind of share with us. And, you know, some of these, like next week, let me show you real quick what's coming up next week, because next week is a really natural extension of what we talked about today. So if you think about today in terms of like the individual scale of like, okay, so where do we live, and do we have to contribute in our society with taxes and with, you know, voting and all that stuff. Next week, we're taking it to the bigger scale, which I think is going to be really juicy to talk about, which is really anarchy and statism. And we're going to talk about war and safety and security from the nation state perspective, borders, countries, and international policy. So like, let's say all of America decided, you know, we're just going to chuck the federal and the state government and we're going to just become communities. And I don't think that would ever happen, but let's say it did. And there are still other countries all over the world. So how do we deal with them, and who are the representatives, and who negotiates with China and with the other things? So these are the types of things we're going to unpack and take on next week. And I think it's going to be really exciting and juicy to talk about that. So I'm wondering if anyone has anything more they want to talk about for this week, or if we can start wrapping up the call. I feel like we covered a lot of really good ground today, and really appreciate everybody's contributions, and definitely still open if anybody has anything you want to say. But I'd go ahead, David.
All right, one last thing, because it was a great call. You guys are awesome. This is so fun for me and enjoyable. I think the future generation is going to benefit from this. But like Kat mentioned, I think speaking the truth is really important. There's a book from one of our past speakers called Understanding Our Slavery. And it took me 2 years to really agree and like accept his definition of the state. He says the state is intergenerational organized crime. And I said, man, that's a powerful way to phrase it. But based on my research and experience now and understanding more, it is. And so just calling out these guys, whether it is the collecting rainwater or the property taxes or the speeding tickets or all this baloney nonsense that they're putting on us, to confidently and boldly say, you guys are organized crime. And if you want to put the intergenerational part in there too. And so we're the peaceful people. We're the people trying to engage in voluntary relationships and provide solutions to humanity. And so that's where it begins. And then building these communities is powerful. And this is all, I think, really invaluable information and conversation for, seriously, not just us, but for future generations and peoples, because we want freedom. And there's this little group of people that steal, rob, and murder peaceful people, and it's just no longer acceptable. Now humanity's starting to rise up. So I'm so grateful to share time with all of you guys. And so I can learn, and we all can learn, and start to expand and grow as a community and build up for this awesome event a few months away.
Yeah, it is so exciting to be doing this. And like, so if anyone's watching me and you see this picture behind me is the Acapulco Princess Resort, the Princess Mundo, which is where Anarchapulco happens every year. And so again, these conversations are ways that we're all getting to know each other, and we're really excited to be talking with you guys, the ones who have already been to our conference, the ones who are going to come next year. You know, make sure to go to anarchapulco.com and, you know, check out our tickets and get your tickets if you don't have them yet. And probably everyone on this call already has your anarchist guide, but please share the ebook. You know, like I said, over 1,000 people already have it. And this is how we're going to share the messages of anarchy. So I'm done for my spiel for the day, but I definitely want to let David, Angel, or Katherine, you know, if you have any goodbye messages that you want to say to our crew. And I just can't wait until next week when we get into this really juicy stuff like government and war and international policy. So I'm saying goodbye for now. Let's have Katherine, David, Angel. Let's do a quick round of goodbyes.
Okay, well, I think this was an awesome conversation. I'm really grateful to everybody who tuned in and joined us. I know my gears are churning myself. There is a book I wanted to recommend as well called Black Flags and Windmills. It's by a guy named Scott Crow, and he was part of the Hurricane Katrina cleanup, and he depicts what it was like to be involved with actual community defense. There were rogue cops, there were people out, you know, raiding houses, and they were armed and patrolling the streets, and they created this mutual aid society where they came together in a time of crisis and in a non-governmental, non-coercive way, protected their community and fed each other. And it's a really interesting story. So I wanted to recommend that book if you're looking for some sort of firsthand accounts. And I just wanted to spell Cheran for you if you're interested in Googling them. It's Cheran. And then the community I was talking about in Ohio is, I believe, raven-rocks.org is their website. You could just Google Raven Rocks Eco Village. And I just want to remind all of you that you are infinitely powerful and that you own yourself. And as long as we are taking ownership of our bodies and our minds and our emotions and our families and our households, we can really start to take ownership of our community in a non-coercive, voluntary, mutually beneficial, awesome way.
That's amazing, Katherine. I want to say, Angel just reminded me we didn't get into the healthcare issue, and I promised that we were going to get into the healthcare issue, but here we are at an hour and a half. And so I want to put this out to the community now. Should we spend a few minutes and talk about healthcare, or should we continue that part of the conversation on the Anarchapulco Facebook page, and then we can continue on video again and spend a few more minutes next week looping back to healthcare as we're talking about the other stuff. I want to leave that to the community to decide, because I don't want to leave anyone, you know, like, oh, I wanted to talk about hospitals and healthcare.
I see Emily Blakely. I see Emily Blakely and Angel. Come on, let's take 10 or 12 more minutes at least and see where it goes, man.
To say about hospitals too.
Okay, all right, then we're on. Let's do this. Let's do this.
I mean, it comes down to self-ownership, right? First and foremost, take care of your body, take care of your health, know what you're eating. You know, if you want to really be healthy, you can't depend on institutions to provide that to you. But there's always a situation when there's a car accident, there's a broken leg. You saw me disappear a minute ago. I'm tending to a child with a broken leg here in the house. And the beautiful thing about hospitals is that they don't have to be run by government. They don't have to be funded by taxpayers. There are nonprofit hospitals. Dell Children's Hospital in Austin has been a wonderful resource for my family because we are uninsured and I'm an anarchist. I don't have government insurance. I live this anarchist lifestyle, and when we needed them 4 years ago, the nonprofit came in and really supported our family. And so that's what I wanted to mention. There's mutual aid societies, there's, you know, people, there's churches and different groups where people contribute certain amounts, and it kind of serves like an insurance-like institution. So I do think that healthcare can be provided to a community non-coercively, but it starts with you. I mean, really, most disease comes from what we're putting into our body or not putting into our body, whether it's negative emotions or the toxic food, toxic water, toxic air, lack of sleep, high stress. It first comes to personal responsibility, and you do not have a right to demand that other people take care of you. You just don't. And so you got to start taking care of yourself first. And then if you're the type of person that likes to give to others, you can participate in a voluntary society where healthcare is provided on a nonprofit or community basis.
Yeah, I agree with that, Kat. That definitely there has to be a focus on wellness first. I think for a lot of people, what they see is this healthcare system where prices are so high, where you can't afford to go get an MRI or to go to the doctor sometimes. And it really is a question of economics. I think that people don't understand that subsidies into the healthcare market are what really cause it to be inaccessible for most people, including regulations. Regulations impose a cost on hospitals, on doctors. And so that really restricts the number of doctors in the marketplace, and it also raises the price. I like to tell this story. I like to give the examples of sneakers, right? Like everybody needs footwear. We pretty much agree about that in modern day society, and yet no, governments aren't subsidizing sneakers. There's no like bureau of footwear. Let's not give them any ideas, but so imagine you have a business and you are selling sneakers and you decide to price them at $200 for your sneakers, which some people do, but let's say no one bought their sneakers. You would have to look at the market and make a decision. You'd have to lower the price of your sneakers in order to sell them people to the price that they would clear the market. But let's say the government came in and said, well, wait, everybody, and like you might end up having to lower your sneakers to $50 per pair or $10, whatever it was. But let's say the government stepped in and said, wait, no, everybody needs sneakers. We have to subsidize this. We have to make sure that everybody gets a pair. We will subsidize those sneakers at $100 per pair. So now no producer has any reason to lower their costs beyond that $100 because they can get that on the market. The government is going to pay, and they're going to pay for everyone. So it really raises the price of sneakers, and it makes so that anybody in that section between, let's say, $10 and $100 who might pay that price can no longer afford it. And then they have to go to the government to get the resources that they need. And so so what you get is more and more people going to the government to provide them with something that the marketplace would have provided if it had been left without the government's regulations and subsidies into the marketplace. So I really think we have to think about healthcare not in terms of what exists now, but what would exist on a free market, and you would see prices coming down. And you would also see because of the licensing, I think we all agree that licensing is helpful. It's nice to know that your doctor has some experience, some education, but I don't think it's absolutely necessary for all fields for people to be licensed. And I think that a lot of the problems of licensing could be dealt with. One, you could have licensing that isn't necessarily mandated by law, but degrees, right? Like you can still go get a degree from Harvard and become a doctor, and that is going to make you more palatable for people who want to make sure that they're going to good care. But I don't think you should price out the people who I don't think you should price out those people who maybe don't have the money to go over. They have alternative forms of medicine, and licenses don't really help in those fields. So healthcare it's a really tricky issue because we look at it right now and see what it is, but I think it would be a different situation on the market.
Yeah. Really cool. Good feedback.
Let me share something too.
That.
Yeah, that was great. I was actually a health insurance broker for a period of years, and I got to see one of the internal reports from Blue Shield. This must have been 10 years ago now, and it was showing the cause of increased premiums. And the cause, it showed 3 of them, but the number one was pharmaceutical drugs, right? It wasn't hospital fees or doctor fees. So what happens is that the insurance companies get in there, the drug companies are making a killing, the doctors actually get kickbacks, and then the insurance premium goes up. So the actual customer paying the premium, he doesn't feel it. He just pays a copay, but he pays the premium every single month, and so they kind of amortize the cost. And so that was one aspect of it. And like Kat said, self-ownership, we're 100% responsible for our lives and our flesh and our body. The other side is that I spent some time in Asia and just learned about their system and how they used to do it. They got the ancient wisdom over there, is they would pay a doctor, a true doctor, to keep them healthy. I'd have 5, 10, 20, 50 bucks a month, whatever. And they would go see them, whatever. And then when they got sick, they would stop paying the doctor. So it was kind of a very interesting business model for the doctor, is that checking up on anybody, drinking your tea, drinking your roots, your ginseng, your cordyceps mushrooms, all these things. And if I get sick, then you fail, right? So that was a really good model that I thought of, just to bring up, because it is, I mean, health is the scary thing. And this is what the state does. They use that. This is what Rockefeller did over 100 years ago now. They saw this and say, oh, we can, I think it was Wrigley too, got involved with the medical business too. They said, man, we can just attack their health. And if it's a self-preservation, it's like innately in us. And so just the voluntary solutions. And I can't remember, there's like a Liberty Club also that's like not an insurance, but like a voluntary group that everybody pitches in. And then when you have some type of health condition, they will cover that cost for you. But the idea is that, hey, we're pooling our funds so that we all can stay healthy. And if Susie gets sick, then we'll pay for her, or, Johnny is sick, we'll pay for him. But the idea is we'll pay $10 a month or $20 a month. That's affordable. And then we know in the back of our mind, if there's a catastrophic event, then they got our back. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah.
On health.
Well, and we can't talk about healthcare without mentioning cannabis. I mean, come on. If these things weren't restricted from us, would we be so sick? Right now, I feel like the government is actually intervening with our ability to be well. So, should government be providing healthcare when it's preventing healthcare? It doesn't make sense to me. Just get out, go away.
Yeah. There's a big war on natural health, and we're going to get into that. We have a whole week devoted to that, actually. So I'm really excited when we get to that part, so we can unpack that for more there, because there's definitely I remember back during the Iraq War, and President Bush was talking about the axis of evil, and then Bill Maher said something on his show like, well, the real axis of evil is the Food and Drug Administration and the CDC and the drug lobbyists. And it's like how they get together and they basically sell us the packaged food that makes us sick, and then they give us the pills to mask a symptom that actually causes some other disease. And then we have to go and get, treated for that disease that they gave us. And it's just layered on. You add the flu shots and the vaccines and the blah, blah, blah. So we're going to get way into all of that. I think it's so fascinating. My gut instinct as a co-host is to say we should wrap this today, because we're really had a great flow. It's been an incredible conversation. The last thing we want to do is have it drone on too long, because we want everyone to come back next week and be energized and want to participate. So I think we should wrap it here. I just am so excited and grateful for everybody, for David and Angel and Katherine and everyone who came on the call today. And whether you chatted in or whether you came on and actually spoke to us or whatever you're doing, you are so welcome and wanted here. And everything that you're participating, no matter what channel you're using or how you're choosing to do it, we want you to know that we value and really want your participation, your feedback, your input. And these conversations are just starting to roll out. So they're going to get more and more fun, more and more engaging, and more juicy. So I think that's it. I think we should just call it and say thank you very much for coming to week 2 of Conversations in Anarchy. And on behalf of Angel and Katherine and myself and the whole Anarchapulco team, we just say thank you so much, and we'll see you here next week, same time.